G'day and welcome to the NRL Finals Week 2 preview. We've got two cracking games. Let's get straight into it. And it's the return of the Enforcers week on NRL. We've got back Kane Evans from suspension for the Parramatta Eels, Marty Tapau for the Manly Seagulls, and the biggest of all, Slammin' Sam Burgess is back for the Bunnies, which means when we head to ANZ Stadium for the South Sydney Rabbitohs versus the Manly Seagulls on Friday night, we have the three Burgeye back together for the first time in a very long time. It'll be upwards of at least 10, 11 weeks. Remember, George was out for 9 weeks. So that's great news for South Sydney fans. And this should be an absolute corker of a game. Manly are coming off the back of a brilliant 28-16 victory over the Sharks, while Souths were decimated in the first half by the Sydney Roosters last week, 26-0. They won the second half 6-4. Who cares about that? No one. At least they showed a bit of heart, which is something Broncos fans might want to wish they'd seen from their team last week. Now, the two coaches, Wayne Bennett for South and Des Hasler for Manly, are two of the best operators in the game. They don't say much. If they got paid per word, they'd both be living under a bridge in a cardboard box. But when they talk, their players listen and they get every single ounce out of their men. They're the best man managers in the game. They rely on total effort from their players and the little 1%ers. You kick, chase, you're on goal defence, scrambling for balls on the ground. Wayne Bennett and Des Hasler will extract everything they can from their players, and they'll need it from this game and for next week as well, whoever gets through. I'm really looking forward to this clash. This will be tough finals footy. Now, Manly, great performance last week, as I said, but they're away from Lotto Land, their spiritual home where they grow an extra leg. They're at ANZ. They've lost their last 9 games at ANZ. They don't like travelling, Manly, and this could be a problem for them because this is a much better South Sydney side, much better looking. Big changes. George and Tom Burgess have swapped. George is now coming off the bench, which is probably, he looked short of a gallop last week, which means Thomas will start in the front row, and that's great news for South because he was brilliant last week. And Slammin' Sam comes into the second row. Huge news. I really missed him last week. You can't have your talisman and enforcer off the field and beat the Sydney Roosters. You watch him stand up this week for Souths and take on the Manly pack. It means Jaden Sewer is out of the 17. Now also much better looking backline for Souths. Adam Dewey is back at fullback. He swapped with Alex Johnston, who goes to the wing. Dewey was out of sorts. He looked like a kid lost last week. He was all over the shop. And the big in is also, as well as Sam, is Dane Gaggai's back in the centres. You want big game players, you've got Sam Burgess and Dane Gaggai. Dane Gaggai, no one performs better at origin level and lifts. He grows about 3 legs, Dane Gaggai. Now, I'm expecting a really tight, tough game here. This will be finals intensity. Souths were blown off the park in the first half. They need to come out firing because, you know, Manly will. Manly did last week and they'll need to again, and Marty Tapau and Adam Fanua-Blake will lead the charge. That's where South will rely on the Burgess brothers to not only stop the Manly forwards in their tracks, but also when they've got the ball, gain momentum through the ruck, where you're looking for Cameron Murray. Damien Cook was very quiet last week. I'm expecting a much better game from him this week. And the number 7s watch the kicking games and game management of Adam Reynolds and Daly Cherry Evans. Now, fullback, no Tom Trbojevic. Brendan Elliott has filled in admirably in Tom Trebojevic's absence. He was fantastic again last week. And Adam Dewey. So he's a very inexperienced player. So expect it to rain bombs to both of those players. And who's got the better kicking game? Well, they've both got beautiful kicking games, Cherry Evans and Adam Reynolds. I expect this game to be one up front, and I think South Sydney just have the edge. Now, Des has been getting the best out of Manly all year, but I think this might be one bridge too far, crossing the Harbour Bridge out to ANZ. I think at home, South Sydney will fight to live another day. Manly have been one of the best teams of the season, considering all the injuries they've had. It's been a great run for Manly fans, but I think it's going to come to an end this week. I think South Sydney will march on and visit the nation's capital next week. I think South Sydney by 6 in a really tight game. Now, Saturday night, we travel to Amy Park in Melbourne, and this should be a brilliant game. The Melbourne Storm, coming off a very, very tight loss to the Canberra Raiders, take on the high-flying Parramatta Eels, who absolutely blitzed the Brisbane Broncos 58-0. But again, Parramatta, for all that brilliant work that you've done the last couple of weeks, you're not at Bankwest. And as we've seen all season, Parramatta don't travel well. They travel about as well as someone with a sensitive tummy to India. Bankwest, they're a 10-20 point better team, and you're playing Melbourne coming off a loss. They were stung last week, and in bad news for the Storm, Graham Annesley, the refs boss, came out this week and said at least 3 crucial decisions went against them last week. So they'll feel a bit aggrieved, but Craig Bellamy and his men are very professional. They'll have moved on. Now, both teams like a fast start, and this is where the game could be won or lost. Parramatta generate a massive fast start when they're at Bankwest. They generally fail to do that away from home, but if they don't start fast at Amy Park, I think Melbourne will put their foot in their throat and just choke them out of this game. Melbourne, they were a bit slow out of the blocks last week. They came fast out of the blocks in the second half, but Canberra were able to switch the momentum round. I'm expecting, the way Nelson Asafa-Solomona started the second half last week, watch Craig Bellamy rev him up, that's the way he'll start this game. Melbourne will be looking for Asafa-Solomona and Jesse Bromwich, Felice Kafusi to start fast and really give it to the Parramatta pack. Parramatta are a big side, so if Melbourne can't gain control of that ruck, it's going to be tough days. But if they do gain control of that ruck, Cameron Smith and Cameron Munster will turn the screws. Jerome Hughes, it's an unchanged side, so Jerome Hughes has kept his spot. He's under pressure from Brody Croft. Didn't have the best game last week, but again, I'm expecting a much better performance from him. And Ryan Pappenhausen, watch him in the middle. He is quick, and if Parramatta, if there's any gaps, Big Junior Paulo, you better be light on your feet, mate, because Pappenhausen will slice through any gaps going. Now for Parramatta, the man I just mentioned, Junior Paulo, is playing fantastic footy. Him and Kane Evans have to play the game of their lives to get through this one. Parramatta have a beautiful backline. Now for Mitchell Moses, though, he's a front foot player. He needs momentum. And Dylan Brown, the rookie, boy oh boy, what an atmosphere to come into. Looking for big games from the centres, Michael Jennings and Wonga Blake, speed and size. And that is where, if Parramatta are going to win the game, it'll be out wide if their forwards can hold that middle. Now, you've got Mike Acevo, Blake Ferguson, up against Suliasi Vunivalu and Josh Adokar. What a battle that is. And the size and speed of Parramatta gives them an advantage there. Clint Gutherson at fullback, he'll be just floating around everywhere, but I think Craig Bellamy and the Storm, I can't see them losing 2 games in a row at home. Parramatta, wooden spooners last year, an amazing, brave effort, but I think it's going to come crashing down at Amy Park this week. I'm expecting the Melbourne Storm to get through this one and march on to reunite against the Sydney Roosters next week in a grand final replay, in a grand final qualifier. I'm tipping the Melbourne Storm to win by 14 points. I think they're going to get a fast start and just put Parramatta away. Anyway, they're my tips for this week. Enjoy your gambling, if you gamble. If you don't, just enjoy the footy like I do. So my winners this week are South Sydney and the Melbourne Storm. I'll see you next week.